The movie kicks off by showing some Italian fishermen chilling on their boat in the Mediterranean Sea. They're having a good time, playing cards, and having a few drinks. But then one of them tosses some trash into the sea and spots a body floating out there. They all rush to check it out, thinking the guy's done for. Turns out he's still alive but has a bunch of gunshot wounds on his back. One of the fishermen, named Giancarlo, goes to work and takes out all the bullets from the guy's body. Then, surprise, they find a chip inside the guy that's lighting up with some secret Swiss bank account code. Later on, Giancarlo goes back to see the mysterious guy, Jason Bourne, but he's nowhere to be found. Suddenly, Jason jumps out and starts asking questions. Giancarlo tells him they found him adrift at sea and saved him. Jason doesn't remember a thing though, so Giancarlo's curious about who this guy really is. After a while, the fishing boat made it to the shore. Giancarlo, feeling bad for Jason, gave him some money to help figure out who he really was using the info from that Swiss bank account chip. So, Jason arrived in Switzerland, wandered around, and pondered his true identity. Then, out of the blue, 2 cops showed up while it was getting dark. They asked Jason to prove who he was. Jason mentioned he had amnesia, but those cops tried to arrest him. Jason turned out to be quite skilled in martial arts and managed to fend off the officers, leaving them stunned. Meanwhile, over at the CIA, the top officials were having a meeting about a failed plan to bump off an ex-president named Nikki. This guy had claimed in a video that the CIA was out to get him, so they were looking into it. None of the top CIA officials were owning up to the plan, but Ward Abbott, one of the top officials, pulled aside his underling, Alexander Conklin, for a chat. Conklin eventually admitted that they had tried to off the ex-president without Abbott's green light, and things went south when their agent went missing. Now, Conklin was trying to clean up the mess. The next day, Jason found himself in a Swiss bank, showing off the bank account number he found on that chip of his. It was no ordinary visit, as they took him to a special room with tight security. He had to scan his fingerprints just to access his deposit box. After a wait, the bank handed over a box with multiple passports and a stash of money in different currencies. Jason grabbed everything and headed to the American embassy. So Jason showed up at the embassy, hoping to get some protection by flashing one of his passports. But things got hairy when the guards tried to nab him, so he had to pull a quick one to give him the slip. He tried to climb up the building and onto the roof, but his bag took a tumble, forcing him to do a little wall-scaling action to shake off the embassy security. After escaping that mess, Jason hit the road and needed a ride. That's when he spotted Marie Kreutz, a young woman with some money woes, grumbling by her car. Jason asked her if she'd take him to an address in Paris for $20,000. Marie happily agreed, and they hopped in her old car. Meanwhile, Conklin got wind that Jason was still kicking and hanging out with a lady. So he had his crew score every surveillance camera in Switzerland to figure out who this lady was and where they were headed next. Finally, Conklin got the lowdown on the two and decided to call in a contract killer to deal with Jason. Jason and Marie were in Paris, and he decided to invite her over to his apartment, thanks to some info from the bank records. He was hoping to uncover her real identity, but sadly, he came up empty-handed. He also checked his last phone call, which led him to a hotel, and using a different identity, he asked about a guest named Ken, who supposedly bit the dust in an accident 2 weeks back. But the whole situation had Jason feeling a little off, so he hung up the phone in a hurry. Out of the blue, a hitman, sent by Conklin, comes crashing in through the apartment window from the roof, looking for a piece of Jason. Marie, understandably scared, takes cover, while Jason does his best to fend off the assassin. Eventually, he manages to immobilize the guy. Jason, curious as ever, asks who sent this guy, but the hitman didn't want to open his mouth at all. Meanwhile, Marie digs through the hitman's bag and finds weapons, Jason's personal info, and her own details, cluing her in that she's a target too. She's all jittery, but Jason tries to soothe her nerves. Sneakily, the hitman tries to get back on his feet, but takes a tumble from the top floor, determined not to give away any information. Jason and Marie had to make a quick exit from the apartment because they didn't want any trouble. Just their luck, a bunch of cops showed up after some guy took a tumble from an apartment. The cops got suspicious, seeing Jason and Marie scurrying away, and they were all set to grill them. But Jason and Marie hopped into their car and got a police tail. Jason, though, had some slick driving moves up his sleeve and managed to outfox the pursuing cops. They stashed Marie's car away after realizing the police had it on their radar, making sure there were no fingerprints left behind. Later on, the police did find Marie's car, but it was as clean as a whistle. No clues for them to track down Jason and Marie, who were kicking it at a hotel. To throw the cops off their scent, Jason even helped Marie cut her long hair. It brought them closer together, and they ended up having a good time that night. The hitman, known as the Professor, got a gig from Conklin to take out Wombosi and Jason. The next day, the Professor set up on a rooftop with his sniper, taking aim at Wombosi's place. When he spotted his target through a window, he wasted no time, squeezing the trigger and taking Wombosi down. The Professor packed up and got ready for his next hit, which happened to be Jason. Meanwhile, Ward got wind of Wombosi's home tragedy and was all riled up. He rushed to meet Conklin for the lowdown, but Conklin casually fibbed, pointing the finger at Jason, who he claimed he sent 2 weeks back to finish off Wombosi. It was his sly way of making his superiors think the mission was a success, and Ward seemed to buy into Conklin's explanation. Jason, still in Paris, got word about Wombosi's death, and it piqued his curiosity. He wanted to confirm the news, so he headed over to Wombosi's place, where journalists and cops were swarming around the scene. Once he verified that wasn't some made-up story, Jason and Marie planned to head back to their hotel. But they spotted lots of police near the hotel, and it seemed like their location was no longer a secret. To dodge the heat, Jason and Marie decided to hop off in the middle of the road and not go back to the hotel. The next day, Marie took Jason to an empty house that belonged to her half-brother, Heman, on the outskirts of town. When they got there, it looked like Eamon had been keeping the place up, so they figured he might be living there again. Before long, Eamon showed up, and Marie asked him if they could crash at the house for a while. Eamon didn't seem to have any issues with that. That night, when everyone was snoozing away, Jason woke up and glanced at Eamon's kids, all sound asleep. But he couldn't help but worry about the little one because his presence in the house put the child at risk. Next morning, while having breakfast with Jason and Marie, Eamon mentioned that his dog had mysteriously disappeared. This set off alarm bells for Jason, who immediately asked Eamon and someone else to hide in the basement. He suspected another assassin was onto him. Once he made sure everyone was tucked away, Jason borrowed Eamon's gun to confront the hitman out to get him. He had a plan. He blew up an oil tank near Eamon's house to create a distraction and lure the Professor, the hitman, closer. The plan worked like a charm, and the Professor followed Jason to a weedy field. From behind those weeds, Jason tried to figure out where the hitman was hiding. When the Professor let his guard down, Jason sneaked up and took him out. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any info on who had hired the Professor because the hitman bled to death. After a while, Jason went back to Eamon's place and urged everyone, including Marie, to leave the area so they could start fresh with the money he had. Marie was hesitant, but Jason tried to convince her, saying they had to find a solution without putting others in danger. Eventually, Marie, along with Eamon and his children, reluctantly left the house. Meanwhile, Jason, still curious about his true identity, rifled through the Professor's bag that he had taken after the hitman's demise. In the bag, he discovered the Professor's cell phone and noticed the last call was to Conklin. Without a second thought, Jason dialed the number from the Professor's phone and told Conklin to meet him alone on a bridge at 5 p.m. After delivering his message, Jason promptly hung up. Later on, Jason headed to the bridge as planned, but he quickly realized that Conklin had tried to trick him by bringing his team along. So, Jason contacted Conklin again, canceled the meeting, and slyly attached a tracking device to their car. As Conklin and his team drove away, Jason easily tracked them and followed them into a building. Using his skills, Jason infiltrated the building and switched off the lights, causing Conklin to search through several rooms. Eventually, Conklin came face to face with Jason, who had a gun pointed at him. Conklin realized that Jason had amnesia when the young man questioned why Conklin was pursuing him. Conklin began to explain that Jason had once been his subordinate and had been tasked with eliminating Wombosi, the former African president who was on a yacht. Listening to Conklin's story, Jason started to recall some events on the yacht. He remembered being on the verge of killing Wombosi, but when the president's young daughter appeared, he couldn't go through with it. Unfortunately, Wombosi's men discovered Jason's location, shot him in the back, and tossed his body into the sea. Conklin revealed that he had been searching for Jason with the intention of bringing him back to his team. However, Jason, knowing he used to be a contract killer, declined Conklin's offer and knocked him out cold. As Jason was getting ready to leave the room, Conklin's men suddenly launched an attack, and he had to confront all of them. After a fierce struggle, Jason managed to escape. Meanwhile, Conklin, who had regained consciousness, was shocked to find that all his men had been defeated by Jason. He decided to leave that place. On a quiet street, Mannheim, who worked under Ward, appeared and fatally shot Conklin as per Ward's orders. Ward was upset with Conklin for causing trouble due to the failed mission to eliminate Wombosi. In the film's closing scene, Jason reunited with Marie, who had moved to a house by the coast. The movie starts with a guy named Jason Bourne and his girlfriend Marie Kreutz living in Goa, India. They're hiding from some bad people who wanted to hurt them before. Jason used to work for the CIA, but forgot a lot of things because of a mission that went wrong. He writes down what he remembers in a notebook. Now, over in Berlin, there's a CIA agent named Pamela Landy. She's on a secret mission to get important files about a Russian politician named Nikki, who got killed a long time ago. But during a mission, they didn't notice that a sneaky person got inside the building. This person set up a bomb and made a big explosion. The bad guy took the important papers and ran away. Pamela and her team were shocked and lost both their friends and the important files they wanted. On the other side, there's another mysterious man named Kirill. He's a Russian police officer, but he also works as a professional killer. He meets his boss, Yuri Gretkov, who runs an oil company in Germany. Kirill gives Yuri the files he stole. Sometime later in India, Jason was at the beach, and he wanted to go home. But then he saw Kirill, a guy he didn't know, and got suspicious. He hurried to his car and picked up Marie, who was shopping at the market. They tried to leave, but Kirill started following them in his car. On the way, Jason decided to switch seats with Marie so he could get ready to defend themselves. But Kirill stopped and set up his sniper rifle, thinking Jason was still driving. He didn't know it was Marie driving. When they got on a bridge, Kirill shot the car, and it hit Marie in the head. The car swerved, crashed, and fell into a river. Jason tried to save her, but sadly, she didn't make it. Jason had to leave her and swim to the surface to save himself. After Jason disappeared, Kirill went back to Germany to tell Yuri about Jason's supposed death. Yuri paid Kirill some money, and Kirill left in a hurry. In India, Jason was really sad after losing Marie. He looked at a special photo of them together. Feeling determined to get revenge for her, he packed his things and left the country. At the same time, Pamela's team was investigating fingerprints from their failed mission. They figured out that the prints belonged to Jason. So, Pamela went to talk to Ward, who used to be in charge of the Tradestone group, to ask about Jason. But Ward said the group had disbanded years ago, and he didn't know where Jason was or how he was doing. Meanwhile, Jason now in Italy, going through immigration at the airport. The system flagged him as someone the CIA was looking for, and he was taken into custody. They took him to a room and started asking him questions. But when Jason heard that the CIA was after him, he surprised everyone by attacking the immigration officers. It was a deliberate move on his part. He wanted to get caught so he could figure out who was chasing him. While he was at it, he managed to tap into one of the officers' phones and learned that Pamela was the one leading the hunt. After finding out, he quickly headed to Germany to meet someone. The next day, Ward was spotted picking up Nikki Parsons, who used to work closely with Conklin. They knew a lot about the case they had worked on together. After some chatting, Ward and Nikki flew to Germany to assist with the CIA's investigation that Pamela and her team were handling. In Munich, a guy named Jarda, who used to be part of the Treadstone operation, returned home one day. To his surprise, Jason was already in his house, pointing a gun at him. Jason wanted to know why the Treadstone group kept chasing him and even killed his girlfriend. Jarda explained that the group had disbanded a long time ago, but Jason didn't completely trust him. He started checking Jarda's things to be sure, and that's when Jarda suddenly attacked him. There was a struggle, and Jason accidentally stabbed Jarda with a knife. At the same time, the police who knew Jason's whereabouts arrived at Jarda's house. Jason quickly broke a gas pipe and placed a magazine on a hot toaster, causing an explosion in the house as he made his escape. Since he didn't get the information he needed from Jarda, Jason decided to track down Pamela in Berlin. He started by calling hotels in the city one by one to find out where she was staying. Once he located the hotel, he went there and pretended to be Pamela's brother, asking the receptionist to get in touch with her. Jason even saw Pamela's room number on the receptionist's phone. He decided to wait for her to come out of the hotel and followed her to the CIA headquarters in Berlin. Pamela and her team came up with a plan to capture Jason alive. While they were busy strategizing, Jason headed to the roof of a building across from where Pamela's team was meeting. He set up his sniper gear and took aim at Pamela from a distance. He decided to call Pamela to find out why the CIA was after him. She explained that it was because of his past, specifically his involvement in the killing of Nikki and his wife in Berlin. This triggered memories of his time in Treadstone when he worked with Nikki. Driven by these memories, Jason asked Pamela to arrange a meeting with Nikki so he could learn more about his past. He turned off his phone, abandoning his plan to shoot Pamela, and left the rooftop. Later on, Pamela and her team devised a plan for Nikki to meet Jason at a specific location to capture him alive. On the day of the meeting, Nikki was in an area where Pamela's team had set up protection from a nearby rooftop. Jason was aware of their plan, so he took advantage of a demonstration that was happening nearby. This allowed him to approach and take Nikki without Pamela's team noticing. Before long, Pamela lost track of Jason, who had taken Nikki to an underground area to question her about why the CIA was hunting him. Nikki revealed that Jason had killed several CIA teams 2 weeks ago during an operation involving secret files related to the Nikki murder case. This shocked Jason, and he told himself not to do such things. However, upon hearing the name Nikki, he had a flood of memories from his past, prompting him to leave Nikki behind. Meanwhile, Ward and one of Pamela's team members, Tom, secretly headed to the place where they found Jason's fingerprints. Tom noticed some unusual things and suspected that Jason might have been set up by someone. Upon hearing this, Ward attacked Tom suddenly, causing his death, as if he didn't want this information to get out. Switching over to Jason, he was on a quest to uncover information about Nikki. He relied on his fragmented memories of how Nikki and his wife were killed in a hotel years ago. To confirm his suspicions, Jason went to the same hotel room where the murder had taken place. As he stood there, his memories started coming back, and he realized that he had been the one responsible for the murder of the Russian official and his wife, following orders from Conklin. Not much time passed before the hotel staff discovered Jason's true identity as a CIA fugitive. They immediately alerted the authorities, leading to the hotel being surrounded by the police in an attempt to apprehend him. Jason realized that his location was no longer a secret, so he tried to escape through a pipe on the building's exterior, aiming to reach the rooftop and find a safer way out. Unfortunately, while on his way, a vigilant policeman recognized Jason. This forced him to sprint away to avoid being caught and attempt to outsmart the officer at a train station. Eventually, he managed to board a train and evade the pursuing police. On the flip side, Pamela and her team were busy examining the hotel room where Nikki and his wife had stayed before they were killed by the Treadstone operatives. Simultaneously, in another hotel room, Ward got in touch with Yuri to break the surprising news that Jason was still alive. To their shock, it turned out they were the masterminds behind Nikki's murder. Their motive was to gain control over oil mining in Russia, as they hadn't obtained Nikki's permission. Ward, who held a high position in the CIA, instructed Conklin to carry out Nikki's execution with Jason's help, back when Jason still had his memory intact. After their call ended, Ward received an unexpected visit from Jason, who had covertly recorded all their conversations with Yuri. Without resorting to violence, Jason, armed with this incriminating evidence, went on a mission to deliver it to Pamela. He aimed to prove that he had been framed by Ward. Pamela, upon listening to the recordings, hurried to meet Ward in his hotel room, armed with undeniable proof. Ward couldn't deny the truth, and not wanting to face disgrace before his country, he made the shocking decision to do the unthinkable. A few days later in Russia, Yuri once again ordered Kirill to eliminate the still-living Jason. Without wasting any time, Yuri rushed to his police car parked in the basement and began his hunt for Jason, who he knew was somewhere in Russia. Shifting to Jason's perspective, he was in Russia, trying to escape the relentless pursuit by the CIA, while also searching for Nikki's daughter. Along the way, he sensed someone tailing him and attempted to shake off his pursuer, Kirill. When Kirill cornered him on a bridge, he took a shot at Jason, hitting him but not incapacitating him. As Kirill prepared to fire again, several police officers intervened, trying to arrest Kirill for recklessly wielding a firearm in public. Jason seized this opportunity to make a quick escape and find a secure hiding spot. Turning to Kirill, who was still in police custody, he eventually explained that he was a police officer, providing proof of his membership in the Russian police and securing his release. Meanwhile, Jason, who had bought a bottle of alcohol to clean his wound, approached a taxi, but the driver refused him. Frustrated, Jason lashed out at the taxi driver and then forced his way into the taxi while tending to his wound with the alcohol he had. As they drove on, Kirill spotted his target and began pursuing Jason. When the two of them entered a tunnel, Kirill attempted to corner Jason's car and even fired shots at it. Jason, in a desperate bid to escape, caused Kirill's car to crash. He then got out of the car to check on the injured Kirill. Just as he was about to finish off the assassin before him, Jason recalled his promise to Marie that he would not kill anyone again. This led him to abandon his intention and leave the scene to continue his search for Nevsky's daughter. Meanwhile, Yuri was finally apprehended by the CIA under Pamela's orders. On a quiet street, a girl named Irina, who happened to be Nevsky's daughter, was making her way home. Upon arriving home, she was startled to find Jason waiting for her. Seeing a stranger in her residence frightened her, but Jason reassured her and asked her to sit on the sofa. He proceeded to recount the story of her parents' deaths, which had been falsely reported as suicide, when in reality, he had been the one responsible for their deaths. Before departing, Jason apologized to Irina, who struggled to come to terms with the shocking revelations she had just heard. Towards the end of the movie, Jason reached out to Pamela to inquire about the CIA's mission against him. She informed him that the case had been closed and expressed gratitude for the recorded evidence he provided of the conversation between Ward and Yuri. Just before ending the call, Pamela revealed Jason's true identity, which was David Webb. This movie kicks off by introducing Pamela Landy, who works for the CIA. She's in a meeting with her bosses and coworkers, talking about a guy named Jason Bourne, a former CIA agent with memory problems. The CIA officials, Ezra Kramer, tells his people to keep hunting Jason, even though he's not guilty, because they think he might be a threat to national security. Now, over in Turin, Italy, there's this guy named Simon Ross. He's a reporter for a British news agency called The Guardian. Simon meets a middle-aged guy named Daniels at a cafe to get some info about a case connected to Jason and this CIA thing called Blackbriar. After getting what he needed, Simon heads back to England and tells his bosses about the Jason and Blackbriar scoop. But as soon as Simon says Blackbriar, the CIA squad led by Noah Vosen starts tracking him down. Noah tells his crew to spy on Simon and find out who leaked the CIA stuff to the reporter. A little while later, Jason, who's in England and traveling by train, reads a news story about himself written by Simon. So, he calls up the reporter and asks to meet at the train station. At the same time, Noah's team, who have been tapping Simon's phone, figures out that Simon's planning to meet Jason. So, Noah tells his team to take care of Simon. When Jason was at the meeting spot, he noticed that Simon was being followed by a bunch of secret agents. He got a hunch that the agents might have tapped Simon's phone, so he bought a new cell phone for Simon and discreetly slipped it into his pocket. This was to help Simon escape from those agents who were tailing him. Jason then called Simon on the new cell phone, which couldn't be tracked by Noah's team, and told him to follow the instructions for safety. At that moment, Jason advised Simon to blend into the crowd at the bus stop. This move made Noah's team suspicious of a guy in a blue hoodie who was using his cell phone. They thought he might be the one giving info to Simon. Jason's plan worked because he managed to outsmart the CIA team, making them think the guy in the blue hoodie, who had just boarded the bus, was the informant. Next, Jason met up with Simon and asked him about the source of the news he had written in the newspaper. Sadly, Simon insisted not to tell him and only mentioned that the Blackbriar operation was a secret continuation of the CIA's Treadstone mission. When Jason tried to press Simon for more, several CIA agents approached them, so they decided to split up. One of the agents began tailing Simon, and Jason had to step in to prevent Simon from getting attacked by the CIA agent. Meanwhile, a surveillance camera in the room, tapped by Noah's team, captured Jason's presence. This made Noah extremely surprised and suspicious, leading him to believe that Jason might be the source of Simon's information. Noah decided it was time to eliminate Jason. After getting the command, the teen with guns got ready on the rooftop of a building, targeting the reporter and Jason. Meanwhile, Simon was still in a building and started to get anxious because he sensed someone getting close. So, despite Jason's advice not to, he decided to leave the building. As soon as Simon stepped outside, a CIA sniper fired a shot that tragically killed a reporter with a headshot. Jason immediately emerged from his hiding spot, pushed through the crowd around Simon, and grabbed some of the reporter's notes before rushing after the sniper. Sadly, Jason couldn't locate the sniper, who had slipped onto a train. In Madrid, Spain, Daniels became worried when he saw the news on TV about Simon being mysteriously shot dead. He hurriedly packed his belongings, including important CIA documents, before deciding to leave his current location. Back at the CIA office, with Pamela's assistance, Noah managed to uncover that Daniels was indeed Simon's true source. Without delay, Noah instructed his team to arrest Daniels, who served as the CIA representative in Madrid. As for Jason, who had learned about Daniels from Simon's notes, he seemed to have visited Daniels' residence in search of information about his own past. Unfortunately, Jason found Daniels' house empty, but he did stumble upon a photo of two men who were recognized as CIA members. In that moment, Jason experienced a flash of his past as an agent involved in a Treadstone operation, connected to one of the middle-aged men in the photo. Recently, Noah's team arrived at Daniels' place only to find it empty. While they were inside, they noticed a shadow in one of the rooms, suspecting someone was behind it. Without much thought, they shot at the door and discovered that the shadow came from a small flashlight attached to a running fan. As they entered the room, they were taken by surprise when Jason attacked them. Noah, who was overseeing the operation, was left puzzled by what had just transpired. Meanwhile, Jason, who had incapacitated Noah's team, moved to the next room where he reunited with Nikki. They had met previously in Germany when Jason was being pursued by the CIA. Jason asked Nikki for assistance in locating Daniels. She, having been a part of the CIA in Madrid with Daniels after the Treadstone operation was disbanded, informed him that Daniels had gone to Morocco. Without wasting time, Jason invited her to join him in pursuing Daniels. Simultaneously, Noah's team obtained information about Daniels' flight to Morocco from his passport usage data. Noah also dispatched an assassin named Desh Buksani to track down Daniels. Upon their arrival in Morocco, Nikki attempted to infiltrate the CIA system to gather information about Desh, who had been tasked with hunting down Daniels in the country. To locate Daniels, she devised a plan and asked Desh to meet her, pretending to be an agent sent by Noah. Before long, Desh went about his mission, with Jason discreetly following him. Back at the CIA office, Nikki's attempts to hack into their system were discovered, and because Noah knew she was assisting Jason, he ordered Desh to eliminate both her and Jason. Pamela disagreed with Noah's decision, especially since Nikki was an active CIA agent, but he remained determined to eliminate anyone aiding Jason in uncovering his past. Pamela ultimately decided to quit Noah's team due to her disappointment with her boss's choice. As for Desh, when he spotted Daniels leaving his hotel room, he decided to park his motorbike and walk. Suddenly, he dropped a bag he was carrying. Jason, who was surveilling Desh, grew suspicious that the bag might contain a bomb. He attempted to stop Daniels' car, which was nearing the bag, but Desh triggered another bomb on his motorbike, situated close to Daniels' car. The explosion resulted in Daniels' death, and Jason was also seen lying in the blast area, leading Desh to believe he had taken out both of his targets. Without hesitation, Desh quickly used Jason's parked motorbike to pursue Nikki, his final target. Surprisingly, Jason survived the explosion and, upon regaining consciousness, set off to chase Desh using the stolen motorbike. Simultaneously, Nikki learned that she was Desh's target, prompting her to leave the cafe and seek refuge in a secure location. Shifting to Jason, he used his skills to pursue Desh, leaping from one building to another until he finally confronted the hitman. They engaged in a battle, but Desh's abilities proved insufficient to defeat his adversary. In fact, he was easily overpowered by Jason. Having successfully taken down Desh, Jason wasted no time in seizing the assassin's cell phone. He then enlisted Nikki's help to send a fabricated message to Noah, making it appear as if both of them had perished. Noah received the message and readily accepted it, thinking it came from Desh's phone. Following this, Jason urged Nikki to part ways with him, concerned for her safety if she continued assisting him. Nikki agreed, and before leaving town, she altered her appearance by cutting and dyeing her hair to avoid easy recognition. Shortly afterward, Jason accompanied her to the hospital where Daniel's body was being kept. By offering some money to the morgue guard, Jason began to sift through Daniel's remaining belongings. Among them, he discovered a file containing the address of the CIA office in New York where Noah and Pamela worked. The next day, Noah's team received a shock when they learned that Jason was still alive, as he was detected on a flight bound for America. Upon arriving near the CIA headquarters, Jason kept a close watch on Noah's movements from a nearby building. He observed the CIA leader stowing a file in a secure safe. At that moment, Jason reached out to Pamela, who was in her office, and asked for a private meeting. However, their conversation was intercepted by Noah's team, prompting Noah to covertly dispatch a surveillance team and assassins to the location where Pamela and Jason were meeting. Recently, Pamela arrived at the meeting spot, but oddly, Jason didn't show up. This was Jason's clever tactic to lure the entire CIA team away from the office, making it easier for him to sneak in and grab documents from Noah. Casually, Jason entered the building without any hindrance and headed straight for Noah's room, obtaining various important files, including those related to Blackbriar operations. Meanwhile, Noah began to sense that something was amiss. He contacted one of his subordinates to inspect the office, and the team there soon realized that Jason had infiltrated Noah's room. When Noah learned of this, he hurried back to his office. Pamela, too, left once her colleague informed her that Jason had managed to break into Noah's safe. As for Jason, he swiftly left the building and commandeered a parked car for his escape. Noah's hitman, Paz, immediately gave chase, intentionally crashing his car into Jason's in an attempt to stop the former CIA agent. Just before the car could overturn, Jason instinctively grabbed his seatbelt, ultimately saving his life. On the other hand, Paz, who also had an accident, appeared unconscious. Jason, who initially contemplated finishing him off, decided against it, honoring a promise he made to Marie, his girlfriend who was killed by an assassin. Instead, he left Paz, who remained unconscious, and proceeded to meet with Dr. Albert Hirsch, the man in Daniel's photo he had found. Upon reaching a hospital where Albert worked, Jason was taken aback to find Pamela waiting for him, claiming to be on his side. Without harboring any suspicions, Jason placed his trust in her and handed over the documents he had retrieved from Noah's safe, seeking her assistance to unveil the truth. Shortly after, Jason searched for Albert, while Noah's men, having spotted Pamela at the hospital, hastily pursued Jason, believing he was inside the building. Meanwhile, Pamela hurried back to the office, desperately searching for a fax machine to send all of Noah's incriminating documents that Jason had unearthed to the state court. Luckily, just as Noah caught up to her, she had managed to send off all the documents. She then urged her boss to quickly find a lawyer to defend in court. Now let's turn to Jason, who had arrived in a corridor. Suddenly, memories of his past flooded back to him, recalling his time as a CIA assassin agent in the Treadstone operation. Lost in thought about his flashback, he encountered Albert, who invited him into a room. Albert revealed that he had been the doctor treating Jason when he had joined the Treadstone operation. He explained that Jason had volunteered for the CIA mission under the alias David Webb. As Albert shared these details, Jason's memory gradually pieced together. Regrettably, their conversation was cut short when Noah's team arrived, prompting Jason to escape by leaping out of the room's window. Below, Paz awaited him, pointing his gun, but he hesitated to fire, knowing that Jason had spared his life after their earlier accident. On the other hand, Noah, also present, grew irritated by Paz's failure to eliminate Jason and ultimately chose to shoot the former Treadstone CIA operative, sending him plunging into the nearby lake. A few days later, after Pamela had sent all the files to the court, the crimes committed by Noah, Albert, and Ezra came to light. It turned out they had misused the Blackbriar operations to harm people for their own gain. As a result, they were arrested and faced trial by the authorities. Meanwhile, Jason was officially declared dead after the shooting and falling into the lake, but his body had not been recovered. Towards the end of the movie, there's a scene where Jason falls into the lake after being shot by Noah, and surprisingly, he seems to still be alive. The movie kicks off with a guy named Jason Bourne, who decides to isolate himself from the world after he exposed the crimes of the CIA's Blackbriar operation 12 years ago. He used to work for the CIA in a secret operation called Treadstone, but he lost his memory for a while and now he's back, trying to make ends meet by street fighting. But he's got this heavy guilt weighing him down because of all the people he had to take out. Over in Reykjavik, Iceland, we've got Nikki Parsons, who used to be part of the same CIA operation, Treadstone. She's doing some hacking business, trying to grab some important files from the CIA servers. But when she cracks open the Treadstone file, she stumbles upon info about a guy named Richard Webb, who turns out to be Jason's dad and a CIA member. Trouble starts brewing because the CIA's cyber whiz, Heather Lee, catches wind of Nikki's hack job and swiftly puts a tracking virus in all those files Nikki grabbed. Heather even goes a step further and messes with Nikki's electricity, plunging her place into darkness. Lucky for Nikki, she gets those crucial CIA files onto a flash drive and hightails it out of there. At the CIA office, Heather was in a meeting with CIA Director Robert Dewey and Edwin Russell, who's the head of American National Intelligence. They were all talking about Nikki, who had pulled off that hacking stunt and helped Jason escape from the CIA. Robert and Edwin decided they needed to track down Nikki, and Heather pitched in, asking to lead the operation because she had experience dealing with Nikki's hacking tricks. Meanwhile, Jason was still doing his thing in the underground fight scene, but he spotted Nikki in the crowd, so he wrapped up his fight quickly to meet up with her. While grabbing his stuff in the dressing room, he found a message from Nikki, telling him to head over to the town square where a bunch of people were protesting. They wanted to give the slip to any CIA agents who might be on their tail. When Jason made it to the protest spot, he's scanning the crowd for Nikki. On the flip side, Heather's team had tracked down Nikki, and she wasn't the only one onto her. Robert had also sent one of his deadly agents, known as the Asset, to the scene. After a little while, Jason managed to get close to Nikki amidst all the protesters. She told him about hacking the CIA's system and digging up info about Jason's dad being part of the Treadstone operation's founding crew. But the CIA agents were catching on to Jason, so he quickly told Nikki to split up so they could dodge the CIA members who were chasing them. So, Jason had to shake off those agents tailing him, and he came up with a wild plan. He set the street on fire, hopped on a train, and when the agents followed, he took them down. But then, the Asset showed up and things got intense. Jason had to grab a police motorbike nearby, pick up Nikki, and make a run for it. The Asset wasn't backing down, though. With Heather's guidance, he tracked them down. But the protest had turned into chaos with Molotov cocktails flying, making it tough for the Asset to keep up. Eventually, he crashed into a building, and Heather told him to go up a building and take a shot at Jason. He did, and his shot made Jason and Nikki tumble off the motorbike. Jason tried to help Nikki, but the Asset shot her, and she passed away. Before she died, Nikki tossed a key to Jason. Jason was really thankful for Nikki's sacrifice, so he took the key she gave him. The next day, he went to a public locker Nikki had mentioned and found a flash drive and a notebook about her investigation. When he checked the notebook, he found a special code Nikki had written, which turned out to be an address in Berlin, Germany. Meanwhile, Robert was at a restaurant meeting with Aaron Kalor, the guy who ran the Deep Dream company, making software for computers and phones worldwide. Robert explained a CIA plan called Iron Hand and wanted Aaron to help by sharing info about his software users so the CIA could spy on them. Aaron turned him down, saying the CIA's security wasn't good enough, and he didn't want to risk his company getting in trouble if they were found out. After that, Aaron left the meeting. Unfortunately, because Aaron refused to cooperate, the next day, some legal officials came to question him about information violations at his company. Aaron was irritated and knew it was Robert's doing because they couldn't work together. Aaron decided to reveal all the CIA's wrongdoing, including the Iron Hand program, in a speech he'd give in Las Vegas soon. On another front, Jason had reached the address hidden in Nikki's secret code. There, he met a guy named Christian Dassault, who led a hacker group Nikki had worked with before. Jason wasted no time and asked Christian to open the files on Nikki's flash drive. However, Heather's virus in the files let the CIA track whoever opened it. When Heather got a virus alert, she immediately sent a CIA team to arrest Jason in Berlin. Christian reminded Jason that they should share all the files on Nikki's flash drive with the American public to expose the CIA's wrongdoings. But Jason had personal reasons to keep some things private, so he refused Christian's request and went back to checking the files, which contained information about his father. This made Jason recall the time his father died in a bomb explosion before Jason joined Treadstone. Christian tried to attack Jason to grab the flash drive, but Jason fought him off and knocked him out. Shortly after, Jason went back to check more files, but Heather managed to hack into his laptop, causing it to shut down completely. At that moment, Heather informed Robert that she had wiped out all the files Jason had accessed. Robert also contacted Jason, pretending to buy some time for the approaching CIA team. Meanwhile, Heather discreetly warned Jason that a CIA team would arrive in just 2 minutes. Upon hearing this, Jason swiftly left the location, ensuring the team sent to capture him couldn't find him. Sometime later, Robert, Edwin, and Heather gathered for another meeting about the ongoing operation led by Heather. During the meeting, she requested that the CIA team not kill Jason because she intended to persuade him to rejoin the organization. Edwin appeared interested in the plan, while Robert, despite his disagreements, couldn't challenge Edwin's higher rank. The next day, Jason continued his quest to uncover the connection between himself and his father's involvement in the Treadstone operation. He reached out to a man named Malcolm Smith, a former Treadstone member who had looked after him when Richard was killed. Jason arranged to meet Malcolm and then ended the call. He headed to a rooftop to keep an eye on the meeting location. From a distance, he spotted a minibus that seemed suspicious, possibly a CIA surveillance vehicle. Meanwhile, Heather, the asset, and their team were also watching Malcolm closely to ensure he didn't reveal Jason's past, using threats against Malcolm's family as leverage. After making their preparations, the asset and Heather's team exited their vehicle to start their surveillance. However, the asset secretly disposed of the tracking device Heather had given him and eliminated all his team members. Unbeknownst to Heather, this was all done on Robert's orders, as he hoped to create tension between Heather and Jason, in the hope that Heather would change her mind about eliminating Jason. On the other hand, Heather, inside the surveillance vehicle, grew suspicious when she couldn't contact her missing team members. As for the asset, he made his way to the rooftop of a building and readied his sniper rifle. Meanwhile, Jason, on his way to meet Malcolm, went to the electrical panel of a building and tampered with some cables connected to his cell phone. After he moved away from the panel, he accidentally dialed the cell phone he had connected to the cables, which triggered the fire alarm in the office area. This caused everyone to panic and evacuate the building, thinking there was a fire. Jason seized this opportunity to approach Malcolm without being noticed by the asset. The crowded scene made it difficult for the asset to target Jason and Malcolm. Jason's plan worked, and he managed to get Malcolm up to the rooftop to learn the truth about his father's death and connection to the Treadstone operation. However, Malcolm couldn't speak freely because he was in contact with Robert through a hidden headset. This ensured his family's safety, but it frustrated Jason, who ended up physically assaulting Malcolm. Little did Jason know the asset had already located them. After a severe beating, Malcolm finally revealed the truth. He disclosed that Richard wasn't killed by terrorists, but was intentionally made to disappear by the CIA, because Richard rejected the idea of Jason joining the Treadstone operation. Jason, seeking revenge after receiving false information about his father's death, had joined Treadstone. Jason desperately asked for the identity of his father's murderer, but before Malcolm could respond, the asset arrived. Jason's memories resurfaced, and he realized that the killer in front of him was the same agent present at the car explosion that killed his father. While Jason was lost in thought, the asset fired a shot, causing both Malcolm and Jason to fall from the rooftop. Fortunately, Jason managed to grab onto a cable, sustaining only minor injuries, but Malcolm didn't survive the fall. The asset descended from the building to confirm their deaths, but to his surprise, Jason had regained consciousness and slipped away from the scene. Heather was quite frustrated after losing her team and losing track of Jason. Suddenly, she was startled when Jason shattered the car window and demanded that she start the car. As they drove, Heather, seeking revenge against the asset and Robert, decided to share some information with Jason. She revealed that her boss was on his way to Las Vegas for a speech with Aaron. Heather even handed over her cell phone so Jason could stay updated on the CIA's plans. Meanwhile, Robert had already arrived in Las Vegas, determined to eliminate Aaron. This decision came after one of Aaron's colleagues provided information that the head of the Deep Dream Company was about to expose the CIA's Iron Hand secrets to the public. Robert intended to carry out the operation in a public setting to prevent Aaron's plan from coming to light. Meanwhile, Heather got wind of Jason heading to Las Vegas and worried that he might get intercepted at the airport due to a CIA ban on his travel. To assist him, she decided to erase Jason's identity from the CIA database, making it easier for him to pass through immigration. As time passed, just before Aaron's speech was set to begin, everyone went about their tasks. This included the asset, who readied himself with a suitcase to eliminate Aaron. In the midst of it all, Jason disguised himself as event staff and discreetly took a tracking device and a mini camera that were on display. Swiftly, he placed the tracking device into Heather's pocket and asked her to slip it into Robert's pocket. Shortly thereafter, Heather, sensing that something unusual was unfolding during the speech, promptly informed Jason. He rushed into the room where Aaron was delivering his speech, scanning the area and sensing someone lurking behind the air vent. Just as Aaron was on the verge of exposing CIA wrongdoing, Jason swiftly directed the stage lights toward the ventilation, causing the asset's shot to merely wound Aaron, though the asset had intended to fatally shoot the head of the software company. Panic ensued among the attendees, and the asset, about to flee, shot the security personnel on patrol. Meanwhile, Robert decided to make a hasty exit from the speech venue after discovering Jason's whereabouts. Jason attempted to chase him, utilizing the tracking device that Heather had sneakily placed in his boss's jacket pocket. With ease, Jason pinpointed Robert, who was heading upstairs. After incapacitating one of Robert's bodyguards, Jason promptly entered the elevator and disabled access to it, preventing the other bodyguards from reaching the top floor. Upon reaching the CIA director's office, Jason inquired about his past and Richard's death. As the discussion unfolded, one of Robert's bodyguards arrived at the room, having ascended the emergency stairs. In a swift move, Jason shot the bodyguard, and simultaneously, Heather made her entrance, ending Robert's life. Without uttering a word, Jason swiftly departed, determined to pursue the asset for avenging his father's death. Transitioning to the asset's attempt to escape, he was seen stealing a SWAT vehicle parked in front of the building. Jason immediately gave chase, and in addition to Jason tailing him, the asset found himself pursued by several police cars because he had commandeered the SWAT team's vehicle. He even intentionally collided with a car on the road, causing a traffic accident. After managing to shake off Jason's car, the asset decided to enter a tunnel, with Jason following closely behind. The two engaged in a fierce battle, and at one point, the asset nearly had the upper hand before Jason managed to turn the tables, defeating the man responsible for Richard's death. He then hastily made his exit before the police arrived on the scene. A few days later, Aaron, who survived the shooting, left the hospital but stayed quiet despite many reporters asking about the truth he planned to reveal in his last speech. Meanwhile, Heather met with Edwin to discuss her becoming the new head of the CIA after successfully completing her mission. Surprisingly, Heather's true aim in offering to lead the operation to catch Jason was to gain Edwin's trust. She even pledged to bring Jason back into the CIA once she officially took Robert's position. If she failed, she intended to eliminate the former Treadstone operative. Edwin, intrigued by her proposal, agreed to let Heather lead the American intelligence organization. In the film's conclusion, it showed a city park where Heather approached Jason and asked him to rejoin the CIA. He walked away, saying he'd think about it. When Heather returned to her car, she discovered a camera containing a video of her conversation with Edwin, discussing her plans for Jason. Unbeknownst to her, Jason had previously placed a recording device in Edwin's car and had been following her.